I'll stop the recording.
All right, I'll have to be careful. All those secrets I'm going to share.
Right? Um, so, Congressman Curtis, kick us off. How has your last 3 weeks been? When you write the chapter in your book on
Yeah.
this, what is it going to say?
So I've actually, I don't write a lot of my journal, but I actually have written a journal entry on this. And if I had to title it, I would title it Panic. And it just seems like we're in a world of panic. Like everywhere you look, and you think it's as crazy as it will ever be, and now it's crazier than yesterday. So all of a sudden today, I'm hearing that we all need to start wearing masks every time we're in public. And who would have guessed, right? Even yesterday, that would be the topic today. And every day, it's a new world that you can't really expect. This whole thing, probably a lot like from a lot of people, to me, goes back to the Donovan Mitchell moment or the Rudy Gobert moment, right? Where it just seemed like the second Rudy Gobert announced that he had it, everything changed, and it seemed to change quickly. And for me, I was back in Congress. I was back in D.C. I was having meetings just like normal. We were going on the House floor. When we go on the House floor, there's 435 of us all in one room. There was no social distancing, even though we were suggesting to the world that they social distance. The very day that Ben McAdams contracted this, we think we know where he got it. I met with the same people that he met with. Walked to vote with Ben. Our offices are across from each other. We walked to vote together. And so things like that make it really hit home when somebody you know personally actually has contracted it. And the fact that Ben's had so many problems with it also hits home. Last week, we voted on the $2 trillion package, and they didn't give us any information about when we'd be voting or timing. So I tried to outguess it. I hopped on a plane and flew out there because I figured if we were going to spend $2 trillion, I should be there in person. I was the only one from the Utah delegation, both in the House and the Senate, that was there. And it was a really interesting moment. And flew back, and on my flight, actually, what's interesting is I think I was safer on the flight than going to Home Depot last week. Because literally there were like 5 people on the flight. The plane had been completely wiped down before we got there. All of us sat down, and then before we sat down, we wiped our seats off. It was a very, very controlled environment, very different than like I say, the Home Depot or the Lowe's that I've been to.
Yeah.
And that's been kind of my life. And now what I told my wife, I'm going to have a lot of time for projects around the house because it felt like things were closing down. And the reality of it is I've barely been able to tear myself away from my desk here in my home. The number of people that need to talk, that want to discuss the legislation, that need assurance, this seems to be endless. And so I've actually really enjoyed, and for me, there's been a lot of relationship building, just talking to people. When you're in a tough spot, that's a really interesting time to actually enhance and improve relationships. And I've just found a lot of that in the last few weeks.
So how long ago did you guys sign the first bill? Was that 2 weeks ago, 2.5 weeks ago?
It seems like a year ago, doesn't it? But it was about 2 weeks ago, yeah.
So you've pushed through 3 major bills in less than 3 weeks.
Yeah, and there's lots of silver linings, and one of them is, Congress gets blamed for being so dysfunctional, and a lot of that's true. But boy, I'll tell you what, when it's mattered, we have come together in a bipartisan way that has astounded everybody. And these bills are far from perfect, and we're all quick to say that, but you're not going to get perfection if you need 435 people to agree.
Yeah.
It really has been amazing that we've been able to push through these 3 bills. And in the Senate, it was unanimous. In the House, it was near unanimous. A very rare thing.
That's cool. For those of you that are joining us, if you have any questions for Congressman Curtis, if you would please put those either in the chat window or in the Q&A window. Brooks Kirsheimer, who owns an amazing restaurant up in Park City called Hearth and Hill, he asks, Congressman, curious your thoughts on the state/governor allowing each county to make their own restrictions versus making a consistent statewide mandate.
Yeah, Let me just tell you, I've got a bias here, having been a former mayor. I really think the decision is in the right hands. And let me tell you why I say that. There are some who would like the governor to act and to be more aggressive than some local leaders. But the reality of it is, for San Juan County, it's a very different situation than Park City or Summit County. So for the governor to make one broad sweeping mandate across the state, you're treating rural Utah the same way that you're treating high density Salt Lake City. And they're just very, very different. And they have different complexities. And so I actually support that and feel like that gives local leaders the best control. It's better to make a decision than somebody living right in the community that's experiencing the problems. Interesting, Moab was one of the very first cities to close down their hotels. Well, they were way out ahead of the governor, and imagine if we had closed every hotel in the state, that wouldn't work. But in Moab, it worked.
And then John Erickson, thank you, Congressman. And then you might have the same response, but right, I'm on text lines with family and friends that are across the whole country.
Yeah.
And my sister-in-law's like, we have 5 cases in our whole county, and they just put in a shelter in place. Like, what? Like, that's pretty different.
Yeah, it's everybody, and especially, for instance, if President Trump were to come out with one standard across the United States. Now, I will tell you, this is not an enviable position to be in as a governor or a county official, because you're going to be second guessed no matter what you do. If you close down hotels, then forever you're going to be blamed for the economic hit to those hotels. If you don't close them down, you're going to forever be blamed for the spread of the virus. And these local leaders are trying to make this very delicate balance between keeping life going, right, and spreading the virus. And it's a difficult decision, and no doubt they will be criticized on both sides of this.
John Erickson asks, I'm going to say his name wrong. I'm going to show how often I watch the news, but Secretary, is it Munchin?
Yeah.
Said yesterday he is working with the Fed on the facility for medium businesses, 500 to 10,000 employees. What is the latest you are hearing in regards on details on that?
Well, I'll smile here for a moment, because I actually passed up an opportunity to be on a conference call with him because it started at the exact same time as this. So
sorry.
So I'm missing his latest update. When we put together the stimulus package, we went heavy on small businesses, and then there was a lot of relief, but it was more targeted for the larger businesses, for instance, airlines and things. I think a lot of people are realizing right now that there may be a gap and a hole in that of businesses over 500. So he's been given a lot of authority, the secretary, over distributing billions and billions of dollars, hundreds of billions of dollars to these businesses. And I'm just going to have, unfortunately, John, I'm going to have you stay tuned to see exactly how that's been distributed, because it hasn't been determined yet. I will tell you this, we'll do town halls myself, and if people go to my website, curtis.house.gov, they'll be able to see the latest way they can get information from me as these things unfold. That's one of our biggest challenges, is getting the information out as these things are unfolding.
Yeah. Adam Fife, who was actually our Fireside guest last week, he's on the executive leadership committee of the National Small Business Association. He asks, what is being anticipated as part of round 4, particularly as it relates to the projection of the PPP funds set aside for the small businesses will be exhausted within a week of them being released?
So Adam, it's a great question. To be frank, I don't think you're going to see a round 4 anytime soon. None of us are in Washington, D.C. Most of us would really struggle getting back there. There's a lot of members of Congress that are in these vulnerable states. All of that aside, that's not the reason we won't get something done. We just spent $2.2 trillion, and people want to see how that plays, where we missed what holes we have, where we run short. I think you'll see if it is PPE right now that needs additional funding. President Trump has executive authority and resources to spend more money there. And I actually think you're going to see things like that before you see legislation. The ability for us to come together right now and put together another stimulus package, we just don't have enough data. We don't know that we're going to run out of money for PPE. Right now, all the money in the world can't buy PPE. Even if we had money, it's more a factor of supply than it is actual money. So stay tuned on that. There's been talk of an infrastructure bill, lots of different discussion, but it's not really taken any form right now that anybody can predict of how soon you'd see something.
So that was one of my questions I also prepared. It's like, what's next? What is Congress and the Senate? Are they in a wait and see pattern, or are they already planning strategically for the next step or move?
One of the difficult things about this virus is it's come at us so quickly, and it's so different than anything we've experienced that none of us have data to make good decisions. That's what Congress, I think, is waiting for. If we're waiting for anything right now, it's not that it's hard to get back there, because we figure out how to get back there. So we don't have data. We don't know if we're at the top of the curve in New York City, or if it's going to still grow. We don't know if there's other hotspots. Is Louisiana beginning to become the next hotspot? We don't know if the summer weather is going to slow this down. We don't know, and we don't even know, quite frankly, how this thing is spread. I was listening to news this morning, and they're talking about the debate between is it through the air or is it by touch, right? And we think we know, but every day we get data. We don't really know why it's affecting certain people more heavily than others. And so that makes these decisions very, very difficult. So Congress went ahead in that environment and did this $2.2 trillion bill, largely guessing. We don't know how long businesses are going to be shut down. We don't know, right, all of these things. And so I think that the best way I could describe it is we're hoping that the $2.2 trillion bill was a pretty good guess at what we need. And now we need to see how it's being implemented. Imagine the challenge of distributing $350 billion to small businesses in any way of semblance without fraud and corruption. Right? I mean, just imagine the challenge of that. And that's kind of what's at hand right now is, okay, let's swallow this that we've just been given. Let's see how it's reacting. Let's see how quickly this virus starts to turn. If it doesn't start to turn, and that's what Congress, I think it's fair to say that most of us are waiting for.
Congressman, this might be an unfair question. I'm going to ask you to put your business owner hat back on.
Sure.
If you were back in the trenches with one of your many businesses, how would you be strategically planning right now with what you know? Like 3 months, 6 months, 12 months, how long will these restrictions of gathering be in place? The economy be impacted? How would you be strategically planning for one of your businesses right now?
I love the question. I love to put on that hat. As a matter of fact, I try not to take it off. I think one of the things that helps me in Congress is knowing what it's like to make payroll, knowing what it's like to not know if you can make payroll, right? I mean, those are things that you and those you affiliate with deal with every day. First and foremost, let me say this. If you're under 500 employees and you have not been to see your bank, pick up the phone as soon as this is done and start talking to them about this $350 billion that's going to be distributed. Don't make any assumptions that you're not eligible. Don't make any assumptions that you have time. Get in line immediately. That's the very most important thing that I'd be telling people right now. The second is, I'm confident, I have no doubt, we're going to see this massive wave of creativity. I was thinking a little bit about it as you were introducing this, talking about the restaurant, and instead of going to eat, we're going to give out gift certificates. Instead of meeting in person, we're developing these video opportunities to talk. We're going to see American initiative shine like never before. And if I'm one of these business owners, I want to be on the front of that wave. We are going to, everything's going to be different after this. This is a Pearl Harbor. This is a 9/11. This is that type of moment where we refer back to this, and everything's different after it. Companies going forward are going to look at telemarketing, telecommuting, totally different than they did before this. And the successful businesses are going to be the ones who are in front of this wave, who are creative, who are thinking of things that have never been thought of before. New ways to do business, new ways to communicate, new product to make based upon the new demands. And I would be sitting my team down and I would be saying, okay, forget everything you know, forget everything that's brought us here. What's going to make us successful going forward? Both in the short term of while we're shut down, what do we do? And then, but also long term, how is life different? Who wishes that they would have invested in Zoom 3 weeks ago, right? and so, like, how is this different? And that, I actually think that can be fun. It can be invigorating, and that those who do that well will profit like we've never seen.
Again, thank you. We've had more people join us. If you have any other questions for Congressman Curtis, please go ahead and add those into the Q&A now. If not, I'm going to keep asking selfish questions. Congressman Curtis, you've been traveling. You've pushed through 3 bills in the last 3 weeks. I also know you're a business owner. You're a father. You're a grandfather. How are you taking care of yourself to have the amazing positive energy that you always have through the midst of all of this chaos?
Well, that's a great question. Before, maybe a couple of them heard you and I were talking a little bit about my daily routine. Every morning, I'm starting at my desk, reading a few minutes. I go and exercise. I've actually increased the duration of my exercise and the intensity of it. I was on the treadmill this morning and I'm saying to myself, I actually feel like I am quicker and faster and better than I've ever been. And I turned 60 in 2 months. And so keeping myself physically strong, I've got my little protein shake right here. I'm making sure I get a really good night's sleep. And then I think really important as an individual and as a family is that we're dealing with and for lack of a better word, I'll just use the mental illness implications of this, of cabin fever. Imagine somebody stuck in their home, isolated, maybe by themselves. They've lost their job or they've been cut in their pay. They can't get outside. And figuring out how to reach out to people like that and touch their lives, I think is a really important thing for all of us right now and can bring a lot of joy and satisfaction. I literally spend my day thinking of people who I need to connect with. Most of those are businesses in the district, and reaching out to them and finding ways to reach out to them.
I love that. I thank you for that. Brooks, who's the restaurant owner in Park City, asked another question. He says, some of the community don't feel comfortable grabbing curbside pickup from a restaurant due to virus reasons. What are your thoughts on grabbing food from restaurants right now, and what advice do you have for the community?
Here's my advice. Get over it, right? It's part of the new norm, right? Is you're going to starve to death if you don't figure this out, right? And this is a really, really narrow window when you can do something to help your community that you can't normally patronizing a business, a restaurant. But it's fine. Today it's a big deal, right? And so people need to figure out this new life we're in. You can be very safe getting in your car, taking the precautions, going and picking something up, and just be careful. Just obey all the social distancing rules. Use your hand sanitizer. Wash your hands, right? And follow these rules, and you'll be just fine. And I actually think this will happen again, right? Sometime. When this happens again, we will have figured out social distancing without shutting down the economy. That I think we can do. And early on, you said, what's my journal entry say? And it talks about panic. And we are truly panicking, and we need to slow down a little bit and think about from a rational perspective how we can keep life going and social distance and still keep our economy going. And so, Brooke, I feel your pain. I wish I had a magic wand. I wish I could get people to live as close to normal life as they can and still be careful with all the social distancing.
Congressman, after 9/11, we then were, blessed or cursed with TSA, additional background checks when you apply for a job. This is going to change regulation moving forward. Have there been any discussions on what those new regulations, like a TSA post 9/11, will be?
Let me address that first on kind of a personal level and then on a regulatory level. I found myself yesterday, I went over to my office. Nobody's been in my office for a week. Clearly there are no germs there. The very first thing I did after I touched the doorknob to go in was run for the hand sanitizer, right? And I've kind of questioned in my mind, will we forever treat germs differently? Right? The common cold, the flu, and things like that. What will we learn through this that will change our behavior on a permanent basis, that will make us more healthy? Now, from a regulatory standpoint, I'm going to kind of go back to this pivot point of we just don't know enough yet. We don't know what we don't know, and there's not enough data in. And so I don't know that you'll see so much regulation, but I think you're going to see some dramatic shifts in how the healthcare world tells us to take care of ourselves. I think you're going to see dramatic shifts in how we view germs ourselves. This has made me totally rethink germs. I used to go, I heard this little thing on the news yesterday that a shopping cart is one of the most filthy possible things, right, that you could ever touch. How many of us have ever really worried about a shopping cart before this?
Me.
Are we ever going to walk into Costco again without wanting our carts wiped down? I kind of think not, right? And so it's a really interesting question, and it makes me wonder more personally than government regulation wise, how our paradigms are going to change. Are we going to get in our own vehicles and wipe down the steering wheel? Are we going to walk into our own homes and go for the hand sanitizer? And I don't really know the answer to that, but I know I'm looking at things differently.
So here, last question, and then because we want to try and allow Congressman Curtis to jump on that call, and then I'm actually going to bring on Nathan Anderson, the COO of Mountain America Credit Union, to talk through how to apply for that PPP loan, because I think that goes live today. So stay tuned. We're at one last question for Congressman Curtis, and then we'll bring on Nathan Anderson. But this one comes from Jeff. What's one of your best leadership tips for us as influencers and leaders to help reduce the panic among those that we influence?
Oh, Jeff, wow, I was getting through without any hard questions. And I think really what I would say to you is people are looking to you to see what they should worry about and what they shouldn't worry about. And my daughter-in-law is a little bit of a worrier, and she was worried about something the other day, and I just looked at her and I said, you cannot control that. Don't worry about it. There's nothing you can do about it. Don't worry about it. And I think like realizing in our lives what we can do something about and what we can't. Right now, and this is what you guys preach, right? It's like, this is a relationship building time like never before. People, when you build relationships in the moment of crisis, they are deeper, right? And the bonds are stronger. This is a time when people should be building relationships. This is a time when we should be using really good common sense about and we need to take responsibility for our own health. We can't blame, this isn't President Trump, this isn't Governor Herbert, this isn't our local mayor. This is us making the decisions about whether or not we're going to go out to Home Depot. And if we go, how are we going to social distance and those types of things? And really realizing what's in our control, what's not in our control, I think is probably the most important leadership trait that I would say right now. And then what's in your control, change it, fix it, build a relationship, be innovative, figure out how the world's going to be different from this, and be in front of that.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you for your work to help us as business owners and your example as a business owner and leader in the community. We are super grateful for you. I know I promised Gina I'd have you off at 9:30 and it's 9:29. And so,
You're awesome. Just know I'm a big fan here. I'm sorry I didn't get to talk to everybody personally in there. Let's all make an agreement, a commitment that when this is done, we'll convene this group together in person.
absolutely. Thank you, Congressman Curtis.
Thanks, Norman. Yeah, thanks.